Welcoming in Thomas Aiello, Senior Director of Government Affairs at National Taxpayers Union at NTU on X. Thanks so much for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me, Stacy.
Oh, yeah, this is going to be so good to talk about this because this is actually what we voted for. And I keep seeing people on Fox News, Jessica Tarlov and others, they keep, bringing up different issues, things they don't like that are happening in the country. And they keep saying, well, this is not what people voted for. I mean, they voted for Donald Trump, but they didn't vote for this. And so they're saying something similar about the rescissions. No one voted for Elon Musk. No one wants to reduce the size of government. But the podcasters who aren't a part of the national media scene, who have their own audiences, are actually saying, I remember when we were talking about reducing the size of government under President Obama, and we were all excited about that, but we never did anything. Like, we didn't finish the job. We never even got started. And now here are the Republicans taking control on this issue and making it look as if it's their idea. I'm like, well, it kind of is our idea. Go back to Reagan. Go back before that. This is a Republican's idea. But it's interesting to see the conversation surrounding this.
Yeah, I think that's the disconnect between the Beltway media and then this new media that's coming up. We have been talking about deficits, debt for decades. I don't think that is anything new. It is part of the Republican platform, and, as what we stand for conservative principles, is we want a government that works better for the people, that spends our tax dollars in the most efficient and effective manner. And look, over the past 10 years or so, the size of government has ballooned. I was looking at the data earlier this morning. In 2019, our federal debt was $21 trillion. That's a lot of money. Today, it's $37 trillion. That's an even larger amount of money. So I think when we look at the last election, we voted for, lower taxes, reining in the size of government, and just making government work better for everyday people. I don't think that's too much to ask for. And thankfully, Republicans are going to be on the process of delivering what we campaigned for in the last election.
So amen to that. What I love about this is, so a rescissions package, you tell me if I'm on the right track here, but I feel like there's almost, let's take some other issue. For example, if you're trying to out some kind of a new thing, you need to do it, but there's a part of you as a human being, because it's a new habit, a new thing you're trying, something you want, but because it's uncharted territory, it feels foreign. It's almost bad. So you tentatively, you put a little toe in, and then you maybe take another little half step. And even though you've told everyone you want to do this thing, whatever it is, you're tentatively attempting to just take the first stab at it. So what you end up with is almost a half effort. And I'm not trying to be insulting here, but $9 billion in rescissions is like not even a piece of your fingernail that you clip off because you got a hangnail. That's not even a hangnail worth of cuts in a $6.7 trillion budget. But it's a start. So what I'm trying to do is see this as a tentative. You get your toe in, you get it wet. You see that you haven't died. It's not acid water. You can go ahead and put your whole foot in, put your whole leg in, if you will. Just jump in up to the knees. Something. They have to get started somewhere, and so I'm just wanting them to go ahead and get this one out of the way, and then it will feel much more natural to come in with a $100 billion rescissions package. Stop protecting these little programs, these pet programs. We see a lot of that going on this week from Susan Collins, and of course, Republicans joining in with Democrats, something only Republicans do, to slice things off of this teensy tiny little package.
Yeah, I think that's sort of the problem with Washington, right, is we only talk about increasing spending, and cutting spending is just such a foreign part of the vocabulary. And you're absolutely right. $9 billion worth of cuts is extremely minimal, but we need to start somewhere. And I was looking at the data, and the House passed the rescissions bill on June 10th. Since that time, we have added $381 billion to the federal debt just in the past 40 some odd days. That's unsustainable. So when we're talking about cutting $9 billion, we're saving 1 cent, but saving $1. The math just doesn't add up. And, we passed the One Big Beautiful Bill, which is something that needed to happen because we avoided a $4.5 trillion tax increase. It set the stage for how we can reform some of these entitlement programs. But when you take into account, economic growth with higher tax revenues, with deregulation, plus rescissions, and now the appropriations process that Congress is kicking off, I am hopeful that we will begin to spend less money this year than we spent last year. That's progress. It's not perfect. And unfortunately, as you mentioned, in this town, things just take time. But as long as we're taking those steps in the right direction, hopefully, this town can get serious about addressing the structural issues that exist within our federal budget.
Yes, absolutely. So we get past the first run, and then we go to the next opportunity. And this is a country in which a $6 billion accounting error was dismissed as a rounding error, and money had to be sent to Ukraine, which, I think if they put that to a vote, if we had some kind of electronic voting system where we all jumped on our phones and voted, that would have gone down in flames. They would have said, you put that money back in the treasury, put that towards them. There's a road here that's full of potholes. We drove down it yesterday. We hadn't been over there in years. I'm like, this is a ritzy little part of St. Louis, and the roads are potholed up to, the neck. You're literally, it feels like you're driving on like a pathway from the 1600s. There are places like that all over the country. There are places where American infrastructure is rotting, and we're sending billions of dollars to Ukraine. No offense to them, but why are we doing that? So we have prioritization issues.
Yeah, we certainly do. And look, just because you mentioned potholes, the Highway Trust Fund, which is the federal program how we build bridges and repair roads, and in some cases fill potholes on federal roadways and highways, that's going insolvent next year. So unless we do something to fix the problem today, this issue is just going to continue. And you're exactly right about how we prioritize different spendings. And I think as we look at this process right now, that's taking place on the appropriation side, right, where Congress, the House and Senate, they're looking about how we fund the government through fiscal year 2026, through the end of next year. And what you're seeing is Speaker Johnson and President Trump, they are saying, we need to spend less money, right? We're at $2 trillion a year in deficits. That's unsustainable. We're going to spend $84 trillion over the next 10 years. How do we spend less? And right now, they've committed to saying, hey, we're not going to spend as much as last year. We're going to cut back. So we're looking at cuts not only to the Department of Education, but across every department. That's a really good thing. And I think the Republicans, voters will appreciate that we're serious about saving money. Elon and Doge, they were exactly right when they said, we're spending ridiculous amounts of money on silly things. Luckily, the Republicans are locking in those cuts, both through the appropriations process, which is an under-discussed part about how we right-size the federal budget, and then also these rescissions packages. So I'm hopeful that the rescissions package will be on the floor this week, and then that'll signal to the administration that, hey, Republicans are serious about locking in these Doge cuts. You should send them more. And, it's a little bit of money, but $9 billion here, $15 billion there, $100 billion in another spot, that really does add up. And when we're talking about $2 trillion worth of deficits, every dollar counts.
So that is how people who start off and they're just making a living for themselves, how they become wealthy. Because the concept you just shared is that money stacks up. So whether you're saving 50 cents over here, and you're talking about household budgets, 50 cents or $3.99, that's how, Apple is a very wealthy company. They don't just sell the amazing products. They also sell you little, storage for $3.99 a month. Well, multiply $3.99 a month times, 50 million customers, and you can see that's a very lucrative part of their business. They don't have to charge more than $3.99 a month for additional cloud storage because it represents a huge income for them. And it's the same thing with the federal government. $9 billion here or there, right, leads to other cuts, which could amount to $100 billion. But even if they're only cutting $9 billion every, if they cut $9 billion a month over time, that will add up, right? I'll take whatever I can get, but I would love to see them be more aggressive. I'd love to see them take advantage of this time that they have. Where the Republicans are in control. Instead of the Republicans jumping over the aisle to work with the Democrats while we're in control, why not try to get some things done that you can be proud of?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And, one thing I'm worried about is, I alluded to this earlier, is this appropriation season that we're in right now. The House, I think they've passed 2 appropriations bills, one as it relates to military construction and veterans, and another on defense, right, how we fund the military and the Pentagon. Those are both higher than they were last year, which is a step in the wrong direction. But the rest of the appropriations, they're committed to lowering the how much money we spend, which is good. What I'm concerned about is because we have the filibuster in the Senate, will Senate Democrats go along and support these cuts to the bureaucracy? I don't think so. So one, we could be barreling towards a government shutdown, which isn't necessarily good for anybody. Or two, how do we fund the government at a lower level? So I really hope that Republicans don't fold their strong hand to the Democrats, and we're in the same position that we've always been in, where we're just going to continue the gravy train flowing to departments and keeping the bureaucracy as it is, right? This is the time to make the structural changes, even if it is minimal. Minimal is still good. And unfortunately, we all want cuts as quickly as possible. That's just not how this town works, unfortunately, but that's the reality that we live in. Cuts here and there over time compound. And anytime you're saving $1, you're saving so much more than that because of the interest costs that would accrue on every dollar that has to be either printed by the Fed or issued through a bond. So the way we look at it is it's progress, but over time, all of these things add up. And I would encourage all of your listeners, if they care about saving taxpayer dollars, now is the time to make your voice heard, make their voices heard to their members of Congress that, as they're considering writing and drafting and voting on legislation that spends hundreds of billions of dollars during the appropriations process, say we don't want business as usual. We want more cuts. We want to make sure that we use this time in the majority to structurally change government so it works better for taxpayers.
Structurally changing government so it works better for taxpayers. Ah, what a slogan. We should maybe get some T-shirts made and mail them to our senators and say, hey, guys, put on these T-shirts if you agree that we need to improve government for the people who are paying for it. Come on, work with us. So that would be fantastic. It's always a pleasure to have you come to us from National Taxpayers Union. We love the work that you're doing there. Thank you so much for coming on the show tonight.
Thank you for having me.
All right, good to talk to you. @NTU on Twitter if you'd like to follow and find out more. We'll be back with more Stacy on the Right.